Hello, my beautiful readers by eyes and by ears. This is Mari Chen, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, of course, we are continuing with the reading of The Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish, also known as 残疾暴君的掌心鱼宠 by Xue Shan Fei Hu. So, I hope you all enjoy. We're covering chapters 44 through 48. Alrighty, let's begin. Chapter 44. Desire to be sucked by the fish. Oh. The Imperial physicians rushed over to check Prince Jing's injured hand, but Prince Jing shielded the injury, shot a look at Wang Xi, and glanced at the crystal bottle Wang Xi had brought over. He had simply been cut by the sharp edge of the broken bottle, but Xiao Yu was the one who broke the bottle in the first place, so they had to check if he was all right first. Wang Xi sighed, resigned, and asked an Imperial physician to look at the fish. Only then did Prince Jing permit the other physicians to treat him. The Imperial physician who was examining the fish soon came over to report that the fish was unharmed. Prince Jing nodded, but his own injury wasn't nearly so simple. The Imperial physicians had to take out the shards of crystal that were embedded in his flesh one by one, and that alone took half an hour. After that was done, the wounds needed to be cleaned, and medicine be applied. Blood-stained gauze was continuously applied and removed, making Wang Xi's heart twinge in pain. He couldn't help but ask, "Your Highness, does it hurt? Do you want this old servant to blow on it?" Prince Jing wasn't in that much pain anymore, but Wang Xi's words were enough to make his expression darken. After the Imperial physicians had dealt with Prince Jing's injury, they reminded him to keep his wound dry and went to report to the Emperor. Wang Xi furrowed his brows and hurried to move the crystal bottle away, afraid His Highness would immediately start playing with his fish again. Prince Jing had to signal for Wang Xi to move the crystal bottle closer. Wang Xi obeyed, but he still put the crystal bottle in a spot that was out of Prince Jing's reach. Frustrated, Prince Jing ordered him to go outside and stand guard. Wang Xi did comply, walking out of the room, but he was clearly unwilling to leave with how many times he looked back. Shortly after Wang Xi left, Prince Jing left his seat and stood in front of the table where the crystal bottle stood. The fish inside was no longer as brave as he had been when he broke out of the bottle and stared at the prince pitifully. The little carp had needed to be scooped up from the ground after he showed off his abilities and knocked the hat off the fake monk, but his new fish scales were truly quite powerful. After all this chaos, the fish was still lively and active, and he felt like he could have assailed even more monks without issue. He did still feel a bit unsatisfied, even after all that, but unfortunately, he didn't get the opportunity to slap the third and sixth princes. But those two had been willing to bring fake monks before the emperor, so at least there was no way the emperor would let them off easily. After his attack, Li Yu had been smugly basking in his success with no thought for his own safety. When he suddenly heard Wang Xi shout in surprise, Li Yu had looked around, only to discover that Prince Jing was bleeding. He'd frozen, unable to work out how Prince Jing had been injured, since he broke out of the crystal bottle in the opposite direction. At most, Prince Jing should have only been startled. What's more, he'd made a huge fuss in front of the emperor. When he slapped noble consort Chu in the face, the emperor hadn't been there to see it, but this time the emperor had witnessed everything firsthand. It was surprising that he hadn't been punished. Soon, though, the emperor's furious scolding had made him understand that Prince Jing had taken the blame for his sudden strange behavior. He'd been so focused on exposing the fake monks that he jumped out while ignoring his own safety and any potential consequences. His special nature definitely would have been revealed by his actions, but because Prince Jing hurt his own hand on purpose and pretended that the fish flying out was a special plan, the fish remained safe. Prince Jing himself, though... Li Yu, safe in his crystal bottle, had gazed at Prince Jing from afar. He didn't know how serious Prince Jing's injury was, only that the emperor's features were now twisted, and the imperial physicians were descending upon Prince Jing. Despite all this, Prince Jing had still insisted that an imperial physician check on his fish first. There was no need for that, of course. He was fine, so there wasn't much to check. But he was touched by Prince Jing's protectiveness, and still had no way to thank him. The crystal bottle separated him from everyone else, and from his fishy perspective. He could only see the busy backs of the imperial physicians. Li Yu couldn't break another crystal bottle and give Prince Jing any more trouble, so all he could do was press against the bottle's wall and watch. Now, as the two of them stared at each other, he severely regretted not thinking before taking action. If only Prince Jing hadn't gotten hurt. One of Prince Jing's hands was injured, so he tried to open the crystal bottle with his other hand. The little carp immediately swam to the mouth of the bottle. He wanted to get closer, but remembering the time he'd accidentally flipped the bottle over, he didn't want to be too hasty. Instead, he just looked up at Prince Jing and wagged his tail like a good boy. Prince Jing placed his uninjured hand into the water, and the pitiful fish who had caused so much trouble swam over and rubbed his fingers. The imperial physician and Wang Xi had both said the fish was fine, but Prince Jing could tell that his fish was feeling a bit low. Maybe he was frightened and sad. Prince Jing patted the fish's head. For his own part, he was somewhat sleepy from blood loss, so once he'd confirmed that his fish was fine, he sat back down and leaned to one side so he could take a little nap. Li Yu was quite worried about Prince Jing's injury. He couldn't speak in his inconvenient fish body, and he and Prince Jing were the only ones in this side hall. So, as soon as Prince Jing's back was to him, Li Yu transformed into human form. He now had a proper place in Prince Jing's manor, and because Prince Jing took pity on him for not having any possessions, he gave him a lot of old, unworn clothes. Li Yu wasn't exactly sure what was appropriate or fashionable in this style of clothing, so he just picked 2 of his favorites and kept them in his inventory so he wouldn't have to worry about running around looking for clothes when he transformed. Li Yu got changed quickly and then approached the side of the daybed, bending to look at Prince Jing's hand. The imperial physicians had bandaged it well, so his hand was wrapped in thick gauze. It hadn't been very long, but some blood had already started to seep through. Li Yu felt so bad that he worriedly chewed his lip. When he noticed that Prince Jing was lying on his side without a blanket, he was afraid that Prince Jing would catch a cold on top of being injured, so he pulled a thin blanket over to drape over him, wanting to take good care of him. Prince Jing had been secretly waiting for this fish for a long time. He even pretended to fall asleep to get the fish to transform. As soon as Li Yu came closer, he turned around and looked at him with a smile. Li Yu suppressed the tearful heat surging into his eyes and said, embarrassed, did you not fall asleep, Your Highness? Does your wound still hurt? Li Yu's heart ached so much, it must be even worse for Prince Jing. The cream the imperial physician used had an analgesic effect, so Prince Jing had already stopped feeling the pain. But when he saw Xiao Yu's eyes full of worry, he hesitated. For some reason, he found himself nodding. If it hurt, would Xiao Yu rush to blow on it for him, the way Wang Xi did? He didn't need Wang Xi to blow on it, but he would think about it if Xiao Yu offered. He waited for Xiao Yu to say those words, but Xiao Yu wasn't thinking of that at all. He thought Prince Jing was still in pain, so he scurried over to the jade box that contained snacks and took out a couple of peach blossom pastries. Your Highness, if it still hurts, eat something sweet. It'll stop hurting when you eat something delicious, the carp spirit said, forcing a smile. Prince Jing lightly coughed, somewhat disappointed. Oh well, since Xiao Yu wasn't going to blow on his wound, eating the sweets he gave him was fine too. But his right hand was injured, so he couldn't really move it. It took a moment for Li Yu to realize the problem. I'll help you, he said. He took out a pastry and broke it into bite-sized pieces. In ancient times, princes wouldn't eat just anything someone offered them, so Li Yu tasted a piece first. You can eat this. It's not poisoned. I feel fine. Please feel free to have some. Prince Jing thought that was a bit excessive, as he trusted Xiao Yu, but it wasn't the time to mention that. Li Yu brought the rest of the peach blossom pastry to Prince Jing's lips and watched as he slowly ate 2 pieces. He couldn't help but think that this used to be how his master fed his fish, but the fish was feeding his master now. Li Yu's eyes were still warm. At first, he managed to keep the tears under control, but once he got distracted, a couple of teardrops fell. Prince Jing was taken aback, and Li Yu panically wiped at his reddened eyes. Prince Jing didn't know he was his fish, so it would scare him to see Li Yu shedding tears so suddenly. Li Yu hurried to explain. I'm sorry, Your Highness. Some sand got in my eyes, so... It was easy to say, but emotions were like flood water bursting out of a dam. Once it found an opening, it couldn't be reined back. Tears were just the same. Li Yu wasn't the kind of person who liked to cry, but he covered his face and his shoulders heaved for 15 straight minutes before he finally managed to calm down, his face soaked. He felt like he'd embarrassed himself immensely. Sob, sob, sob. I wanted to take care of my master, but I let him see something so humiliating. Li Yu's eyelids were slightly swollen and his voice was hoarse. My apologies. I was a bit scared after I found your highness injured. Faced with such a clumsy lie, Prince Jing paused, then smiled and patted Li Yu's head. Unfortunately, his own hand was still wrapped in gauze, so he couldn't hold a brush and had no way to say what he wanted to say. He felt unhappy that Xiao Yu was crying. In the end, it was his own incompetence that made Xiao Yu worry. Prince Jing pulled out a clean cloth from beside the pillow and silently handed it to Li Yu. Li Yu wiped his face with it and smiled wetly. Does it still hurt, your highness? Prince Jing sighed internally. It's not like you're going to blow on it even if it hurts. But, afraid that Xiao Yu would worry, he shook his head this time. Then you should get some more rest, said Li Yu. Wounds heal faster when you're asleep. Really? Prince Jing had never heard of that before, but he did as Li Yu said and shifted his body to lie down. Li Yu sat down on the side of the daybed, but soon got up as if he remembered he had to do something, only for Prince Jing to grab his wrist. Your Highness, he said, distressed. I'm going to get some water for you. Li Yu had noticed that Prince Jing's lips were dry and thought he might want some water to soothe his throat. Prince Jing shook his head and refused. Helpless, Li Yu could only give in. Since Prince Jing was holding on to his arm, it was hard for him to step away. If Prince Jing wanted to sleep, then he could only watch from the side, but it wasn't as if sitting beside him was tiring. Prince Jing lay quietly for a while, then opened his eyes. His deep gaze, heavy with emotion, fell on Li Yu. Recently, Prince Jing was always looking at him like that. It was a different gaze from the one he used with the third prince, the sixth prince, or Wang Gongong. Li Yu could always sense a slight smile in it. Your Highness, is there anything else you want? He asked worriedly, not realizing how gentle his tone was. Prince Jing pursed his lips. He wanted to get closer, but this fish had no self-awareness, so he could only use some other tricks to accomplish that. So, Prince Jing, who was wrapped in a blanket and warm all over, pretended to shiver. Your Highness, are you cold? Prince Jing nodded at him twice, earnestly. Li Yu thought it was natural to feel cold after losing blood, and tyrants were no exception. But there were no more blankets on the daybed, so Li Yu said hurriedly, Your Highness, please wait. I'll go find another blanket. Li Yu was about to go searching when Prince Jing bolted upright faster than he could, pulled him back down, and patted his shoulder, communicating that he should stay in place. Li Yu did as he asked, confused, and watched helplessly as the tall, large man wrapped in a blanket feebly rested his head on his thighs. Huh? So sleeping on someone's legs while cold would help? The human body was warm, so this might be more comfortable than wrapping another blanket around him. Li Yu's eyes had just been hot, but now it was his face's turn. He convinced himself that since Prince Jing had been injured on his account, there was nothing wrong with him using his leg as a pillow. He tried his best to ignore the unfamiliar feeling on his legs. Prince Jing closed his eyes, satisfied, and slightly smiled. Then he pretended to shiver again. Your Highness, are you still cold? Li Yu asked cautiously. Prince Jing nodded eagerly, 3 times this time. Thinking of how His Highness was wounded because of him, Li Yu hugged him in resignation. How about now? Prince Jing settled in, still somewhat disappointed. His Highness was so cold. He wanted someone to suck his essence. That's hilarious. Chapter 45. Fishy Nursing. Prince Jing was injured, so once he'd taken his medicine, he fell asleep after laying on Li Yu's lap for a bit. Li Yu boldly stared down at the tyrant's handsome face, but after a while he found that being a pillow was hard on his waist and legs. Prince Jing had finally gotten to sleep, though, and Li Yu was too afraid he'd wake him to move. But being tired wasn't the most pressing matter right now. He was forced to consider how much time he had left as a human. What if he just turned into a fish right here? Li Yu had a sudden thought. If he turned back while Prince Jing was laying on him like this, wouldn't he get crushed under Prince Jing's head? What if he was flattened? Li Yu shook his head. He had to sneak away before he changed back, but Prince Jing was still sleeping. In his moment of conflict, worrying about being stuck between a rock and a hard bed, the door to the side hall was cracked open. Wang Gongong peeked inside. Help had arrived! Li Yu finally blinked furiously at Wang Xi. Wang Xi immediately noticed that there was another person in the side hall and that His Highness was resting on that person's lap. He was stunned for a moment. then scurried over. "You're Li Gongzi?" Wang Xi quickly asked, his voice low. Prince Jing had expended a lot of effort in his friendly abduction of the human fish to his manor, and of course made sure Wang Xi was informed on it. However, he didn't reveal Xiao Yu's real name. Wang Xi had at least managed to figure out that someone else's male concubine was just a beautiful misunderstanding. The young man was now a member of the residence. He was surnamed Li, and he worked only for Prince Jing. That was all Prince Jing explained, and nothing else. He didn't allow anyone to ask him about him either, and he'd decreed that no matter who ran into Li Gongzi, they were to treat him with the utmost respect, as if they were greeting Prince Jing himself. People couldn't just enter Prince Jing's room as they pleased. Most of the manor's residents didn't get much of an opportunity to run into the fabled Li Gongzi. However, as Prince Jing's trusted confidant, Wang Xi had glimpsed Li Gongzi's back a couple of times. From what he could glean, this Li Gongzi probably lived in His Highness's room, and his whereabouts were often unknown. Because of Prince Jing's orders, Wang Xi wasn't particularly suspicious, but he did wonder if there was something going on between the prince and this Li Gongzi. Li Gongzi was definitely the person Prince Jing liked. Wang Gongong had a good memory and recalled several occasions he'd come across Li Gongzi and His Highness entangled with each other. Now that Li Gongzi was a personal servant of Prince Jing's, he would often go to His Highness's room and not come out. Coupled with the fact that Prince Jing wanted them to treat him and serve him well, that seemed to be what was happening. Right now, with Li Gongzi appearing next to Prince Jing and with Prince Jing sleeping in his lap, Wang Xi was even more sure of the relationship between the two. However, he didn't show anything on his face. His Highness had told him several times that if he saw Li Gongzi, he wasn't to be startled or speak nonsense, but to treat him normally. Wang Xi kept that in mind and acted accordingly. Li Yu nodded slightly to Wang Xi. Wang Xi softly inquired about Prince Jing's injury, and Li Yu told him what he knew. As Wang Xi was just about to exit and give the two of them some privacy, Li Yu stopped him. "Wang Gongong, please wait," Li Yu pleaded quietly. I still have business to attend to, so could you help me?" Wang Xi immediately understood what he wanted and helped him gently lift Prince Jing onto the daybed. Li Yu covered Prince Jing with a blanket, just as the system was already beginning to count down. Li Yu didn't have any time to say anything else to Wang Gongong. He ran toward the door and quickly hid behind the cabinet nearby, where he had placed a crystal bottle beforehand, just out of sight. Li Yu had lots of experience transforming by now, and aside from keeping track of the time, he had also gotten into the habit of placing a crystal bottle or a fish tank in a hidden area. When his time was almost up, he just had to hide nearby and transform, then jump into the crystal bottle or the tank. This time was no exception. Li Yu quickly turned back into a little carp and gathered all his strength with his tail. Jumping around all the time was a bit too noisy and noticeable, so ever since Li Yu realized that he could stiffen his tail and use it as a sort of base to support his fish body for a short amount of time, he would simply use it as a little skateboard. With a push, he arrived in front of the crystal bottle and jumped right in. While he completed this series of dazzling moves, Wang Xi thankfully didn't even look around. Li Yu sighed in relief and started swimming happily in his crystal bottle. Once Wang Xi had made sure Prince Jing was all right, he turned around to look for Li Gongzi, but realized he'd disappeared. He thought Li Gongzi had perhaps left again, and since His Highness had forbidden asking after Li Gongzi's whereabouts, he obeyed. But when he passed by the door on the side hall, he found that the crystal bottle was on the ground for some reason, with Master Fish in it, wagging his tail at him. Wang Xi smiled and picked up the crystal bottle, placing it in front of the bed. When His Highness woke up, he definitely wanted to see his fish first. While Prince Jing was resting in the side hall of Tianqing Palace, though, on the other side of the wall, in the main hall, most of the room was kneeling in front of the emperor. Since the sixth prince had brought in those fake monks, the emperor thought the fake monks and the nursery rhyme were both very suspicious and ordered an investigation. However, the investigation into the nursery rhyme would require going out to question the common people, so the fake monks who dare sneak into Tianqing Palace were punished first. These fake monks were simply a random group of troublemakers. Unable to withstand the torture, they quickly admitted that the third prince had bribed them. The emperor immediately started scolding the third prince, who thought his position as crown prince was all but confirmed. The sixth prince, who was rarely cited but had made a rare main stage appearance, was berated severely as well. Since he was a child, Mu Tianxiao had always understood what the most beneficial thing to do was, and as soon as he realized that things weren't going well, he knelt in apologetic obeisance. "Royal father, I was wrong, but I did not have any bad intentions. I heard the nursery rhyme sung among the common people and was concerned, so I wrote it down to report it to you. As for these monks, I was not aware they were fake, as I didn't imagine they would have cause to lie. These were all lapses in judgment on my part, and I won't simply believe everything I hear in the future." Mu Tianxiao was extremely devious and had always hidden behind Mu Tianming. His name wasn't directly involved with the fake monks and the nursery rhyme, while the third prince's was. He was never one to be an obvious schemer, so he was confident that no matter how far the emperor investigated, he wouldn't be implicated. Now that the emperor had exposed his plans, it was no big deal for him to admit his mistake. On the other hand, Mu Tianming was a bit slower. By the time he started lowering himself to his knees, Mu Tianxiao had already finished his confession and said everything he was supposed to say. "Royal father, I didn't do it," Mu Tianming said. "I just thought there was something wrong with Prince Jing's fish." He was still in shock from the fish leaping out and knocking off the fake monk's hat. Prince Jing claimed he'd discovered the monk's flaw and threw the crystal bottle at him, but thinking back over it all, the third prince wasn't sure what had really happened first, Prince Jing's hand bleeding or the fish leaping out. But he felt like it was the fish. Mu Tianming thought the fish was very suspicious. If he could convince the emperor of this, then the issue of the monks would be irrelevant. "Tianming, you still don't think you did anything wrong?" After the monk's testimony, the emperor didn't want to listen to the third prince at all. The sixth prince had already admitted his wrongdoings, yet the third prince was still here trying to argue? The emperor knew very well that the sixth prince often followed the third prince and helped him out. Though the sixth prince was the one who'd mentioned the fake monks and the nursery rhyme, the monks only testified against the third prince. The sixth prince had mentioned the third prince several times in his speech too. The third prince had to have at least known about what the sixth prince did, but the sixth prince was willing to admit his mistake while the third prince wasn't. These contrasting attitudes meant that the third prince must have been the one behind all of it. When the emperor had ordered the Imperial Astrological Bureau to read the skies for Prince Jing's fish, Mu Tianming jumped out to question them and was refuted by Director Xun. Later on, the sixth prince brought up the nursery rhyme and the fake monks. Wasn't this an obvious attempt to overturn the Imperial Astrological Bureau's conclusion? The emperor suddenly remembered something else. A few days ago, Luo Zheisheng told him that the third prince had gone to Prince Jing's manor to buy his fish, but Prince Jing chased him out. The emperor took it as a joke at first, but now that he thought about it, didn't the third prince think of the fish as an auspicious sign as well? Otherwise, why would he try to buy the fish? Why would he change his attitude in just a few days? The nursery rhyme, the fake monks, they were all attempts to use this fish to make him suspicious of Prince Jing. But why did the third prince do this? From what the emperor understood of the third prince probably got jealous when he saw the emperor give Prince Jing's fish special treatment, and when the third prince failed to buy the fish from Prince Jing, he thought Prince Jing was rude and ordered the sixth prince to work with him to frame Prince Jing. The emperor's head hurt. He'd been keeping an eye on Mu Tianming, actually. Ever since he could remember, Mu Tianming was always competing with Mu Tianzhao. Mu Tianming was inferior to Mu Tianzhao in terms of ability, but he had his strong points too. There was a period of time when he valued this son of his quite a lot, albeit not as much as he valued Mu Tianzhao. The tragedy that befell Mu Tianzhao was ultimately because the emperor had permanently and unofficially announced that he was to become the crown prince. Now, the second prince was no longer in consideration. Learning from his previous mistake, he had no intention of choosing a crown prince yet. He wanted to wait a couple more years and see how the other princes fared. When the seventh and eighth princes were a little older, he could compare all the princes and select the best of them to be crown prince. But just because the emperor didn't have a crown prince in mind didn't mean that others wouldn't. Mu Tianming used to be quite humble, but without someone above him to compete with, his ambitions were quickly revealed. It wasn't that the emperor was unaware of Mu Tianming's recent actions in court. He knew that the officials who used to have a good relationship with Mu Tianzhao had switched teams, and that Consort Qian had also tried to intervene several times when he was dealing with concubine Chu. These were all expressions of their restlessness, but the emperor put up with it. He didn't have many adult sons, so he hadn't made any efforts to control the third prince, hoping that even once he'd gained some power of his own, the third prince and his mother would behave themselves. That had clearly been a foolish assumption. If he'd really listened to the nursery rhyme and the impostor monks today, allowing himself to be alienated from Prince Jing, what would he have done to him? He had already started to suspect Prince Jing. The emperor was both upset and ashamed. He didn't want to shoulder the responsibility himself for almost falling for the trap, so he could only take out his anger on the two princes who were behind all this, the third prince especially. Since he'd already deposed the second prince, the emperor didn't want to take harsh action against any of his adult sons again so soon, so he simply relieved the third prince of his duties, as he did the second prince. The third prince was luckier than the second prince had been. Mu Tianzhao had received a title that meant there was no hope left for him, while Mu Tianming remained a prince and wasn't so thoroughly humiliated, but he wasn't much better off. Since Prince Jing's hand was injured, the emperor ordered the guards to hit the third and sixth prince 100 times with the plank, and he personally watched so they couldn't take it easy. After that, the sixth prince was fined and grounded, while the third prince was told that his presence was no longer required in court and that he was to go to the imperial study room and study with his younger brothers, the seventh and eighth princes, every day. This punishment was only for bringing in the fake monks. If the investigation into the nursery rhyme concluded that the third prince was also behind it, then it would be up to the third prince to decide his own fate. The third and sixth princes were the first and last of their standing to ever be beaten by the plank. It was a magnificent sight. The emperor ordered the guards to carry out the punishment right in Tianting Palace. The two princes had their trousers removed in front of everyone and were held down over a stool to be beaten. The sixth prince bore the pain without uttering a single sound, but the third prince cried out every time he was hit. The sound could be heard in the side hall where Li Yu floated in his crystal bottle, listening in satisfaction. The emperor was publicly punishing the third and second princes on behalf of Prince Jing, and Li Yu was appeased. He was worried about Prince Jing, so he didn't enter the system, even when he turned back into a fish. He felt like he'd heard the system chime while he was creating chaos in the main hall earlier, but he didn't know for sure what was going on with his missions. He decided he'd wait until Prince Jing woke up to check. He didn't have to wait long. Prince Jing was soon woken up by the third prince's bone-chilling screams. When Prince Jing opened his eyes, he saw a little car peeking at him from a crystal bottle. Did he change back before he could absorb essence? Prince Jing wondered. Well, the days were long, so there was no need to rush. Prince Jing smiled a little. He knew that Xiao Yu was worried about him, so he wanted to comfort him and pet him a little. To the prince's great disappointment, though, before he could even lift his uninjured hand to reach out, the carp spirit's tail stretched out as he started to meditate. His tyrant master finally woke up. Li Yu entered the system at once to check his main mission, only to find that the Koi's side mission he'd been ignoring had been updated. Chapter 46. The Joy of Petting Fish. Li Yu checked the Koi mission. The original line was, "To become a Koi, one must have the characteristics of a Koi." But it was different now. It said, "To become a Koi, one must experience being a Koi first." Huh? Li Yu asked the system. Why did the prompt change? If he remembered correctly, it had happened while he was creating chaos in Tianting Palace. The system patiently explained, when the user becomes protective and risks his own life for the tyrant, this is when the user has the characteristics of a Koi. Li Yu suddenly realized, so, the characteristics of a Koi means being protective. This whole damn time, he thought it was good fortune. Actually, it made sense, of course. People hoped Koi could bring good fortune, but wasn't that just a kind of wish for protection? Because of an unintentional move and a combination of strange circumstances, the Koi mission had been accidentally updated. But the update wasn't complete. The mission was still in progress. Li Yu was a little worried. What does it mean to experience being a koi? User, are you ready? Huh? Before Li Yu could act, the scene before him suddenly changed. The mental world of the system used to be wild and chaotic, but now it was a vast, starry sky. The system solemnly said, User, please choose a target and experience being a koi. Wait, the system wanted him to choose someone? He wasn't prepared at all. Li Yu had no idea what the system wanted, but with a closer look, he saw a new path in front of him that led into the dark. Li Yu was still in his fish form. He cautiously gave it a try and found that he could still swim along the road without the water. This would have been impossible in reality, so he must still be in the mental world. The system urged him, User, please carry out your mission with no worries. No worries? As if. Every single time the system said that, it scammed him. Li Yu was so on guard, he thought about exiting the system first. He was completely unprepared. He'd only come in to check his progress. Prince Jing was still outside. What if he failed and couldn't turn into a koi? But though he could normally exit the system easily, he couldn't now. The system had started scamming him already by not giving him a way out, trapping him in this mental world. If he wanted to escape, it looked like he would have to do as the system said and experience being a koi. Since he'd caused a lot of trouble by changing scales, Li Yu wasn't terribly excited to become a koi, but such was the life of a fish. Li Yu swam along the path in front of him. Eventually, he wasn't sure how much time had passed. A light shone from ahead, and his surroundings gradually became clear. He realized he was in the Imperial Palace, because the tiles of the walls were the gold ones that only appeared there. Since he could still swim around but couldn't leave the mental world, though, it was all an illusion. The system didn't prompt him, meaning he would have to work everything out for himself. He was used to it by now, but what did it mean by pick a target? He hadn't seen anyone yet. As if in response to his confusion, he heard voices a distance away. Li Yu swam over and found two kids fighting in the grass. Of the two children, one, the older of the two, was taller and skinnier, while the other was shorter and chubbier, a little round boy with bulging cheeks and a plump body. The older one seemed to be about 7 or 8 years old, and the younger one about 2 or 3. It wasn't clear why they were fighting each other. The larger child was sly, pinching and twisting the flesh of the plumper boy, even kicking him in the stomach. Any other child would have started crying long ago, but not only did the plump boy not cry, he even clenched his teeth and greeted the other child's face with his fist, giving him a black eye. Must be Prince Jing. Li Yu was close by, and it seemed the children couldn't see him. He tried separating them, but he couldn't touch them. So it was truly an illusion, and he could only watch. Did the system mean for him to pick someone out of these two children? The fight ended quickly once the little plump boy chomped into the larger child's arm. The older child covered his wound and cried out, "Just you wait! I'm telling our royal father!" He howled and wailed the entire way as he ran. The plump boy stared at his back coldly, then lowered his head and picked up a broken paper kite beside him, tidying it up himself. From the mentioned royal father, Li Yu guessed that these two boys must be princes. But these ages didn't match the ages of the 7th and 8th princes he knew of. What's more, those two little radishes were on good terms, and the original novel never mentioned that they fought. So, who was this little chubby boy? As Li Yu watched, a servant ran forward in a hurry, hugging the plump boy. "Your Highness, why did you fight with the second prince again? Did you beat him into the ground?" Li Yu laughed with a pfft. The way the servant spoke was quite funny. The chubby boy's dark eyes glittered, and he nodded. The servant turned around with the boy to wipe his face, and when Li Yu clearly saw the servant's face, he was shocked. The face was almost identical to Wang Xi's, just a little younger. Li Yu was stunned. Was this a mysterious relative of Wang Gongong's? No, Li Yu. Li Yu's interest in these two was piqued. The servant who looked like Wang Xi led the chubby little prince away, and Li Yu quietly followed, only to see them enter a building. Liu looked around and thought the place looked familiar, so he lifted his head and glanced at the plaque at the entrance. The words Jing Tai Hall were engraved. Liu stopped in his tracks. He was aware of only one prince who'd lived in Jing Tai Hall, and the servant looked so similar to Wang Xi. Having suddenly stumbled upon the truth, Liu almost screamed. No way! No wonder the chubby boy didn't say anything when he was getting hit, and no wonder the servant looked so much like Wang Xi. A child's appearance would change a lot as he grew up, so Liu didn't recognize the chubby boy, but adults didn't change that much. The silent prince who lived in Jingtai Hall and the young servant who resembled Wang Xi. Weren't they Prince Jing and Wang Xi? He knew the system liked to scam fish. Before, it had always been inconsequential things. But now, not only was the system not letting him exit, it also put him in an illusion from more than 10 years ago? Huh. So Prince Jing was a little dumpling when he was a child. Entering an illusion didn't seem like a big deal to Li Yu, since he'd already transmigrated into a book. But when he realized that he was seeing Prince Jing's childhood, he was a little happy. He swung his tail crazily, racing to follow behind the chubby boy. Baby Prince Jing and Wang Xi still couldn't see him, so Li Yu swam boldly in front of them and jumped into the familiar courtyard. Wang Xi wiped Prince Jing's round little face clean, then left the chubby boy in the courtyard and told him not to wander around. It seemed he was going to get something. Prince Jing was very obedient and really just sat there with a straight face, unmoving. Li Yu swam behind the round boy and swished his tail across his back a couple of times, but the little Prince Jing didn't react. As expected, he couldn't feel Li Yu. So, how was he to experience being a koi? Well, either way, now that Li Yu knew the chubby boy was Prince Jing, he'd definitely choose him. While he was thinking with his fish head cocked, the older prince that Prince Jing had chased away returned. Li Yu remembered that Wang Xi had called him the second prince. So, that must have been the second prince when he was a child. The second prince ran over, and Prince Jing stared at him fiercely. The second prince said angrily, "Our royal father said I should teach you a lesson. He won't come to see you, and he won't care about you." Prince Jing was riled, and they started to tussle again. To Li Yu, a fight between two children seemed like a fight between helpless baby birds. Even if he wanted to help, he couldn't. The two princes were tangled together in the fight again, and when they rolled over to a pond, Prince Jing was unprepared. The second prince somehow mustered the strength to shove Prince Jing into the pond. The young Prince Jing didn't know how to swim, and when the second prince saw him struggling in the water, he ran away screaming, "Don't run! Come back and save him!" Li Yu swam back and forth anxiously, but Wang Xi wasn't there and nobody was nearby either. No, he had to save Prince Jing, even if it was an illusion. Li Yu jumped into the pond without hesitation. The moment he hit the water, he felt a long, absent wetness. It seemed he had fully entered the illusion. There was no time to think. He swam straight to Prince Jing's side like an arrow. The black jetfish, with a golden belly and tail, suddenly appeared out of nowhere, surprising chubby little Prince Jing enough that he forgot to keep struggling. He was just about to sink, but Li Yu opened his mouth and grabbed the hem of his clothes. He could touch Prince Jing now, as he suspected, but he was just a little carp. No matter how much strength the system gave him, he couldn't lift a 2- or 3-year-old child. He needed to be bigger and stronger. Li Yu prayed fervently. At that moment, his body seemed to answer his prayers and started to grow. When he finally grew as long as the chubby boy's arm, Li Yu grabbed him by his clothes again. He could finally move him a bit, and he tugged and pushed him to shore. The chubby boy's cheeks were flushed, and he looked excited. His eyes were wide open, and he stared at the fish without blinking. Li Yu was exhausted, but still concerned for the boy. He couldn't leave the pond and swim in the air like he did before, so he stayed in the water and pushed his back against the little boy's hand. Chubby Prince Jing gave him a look of confusion. So dumb. He doesn't even know how to pet a fish. How did this kid turn into the man who petted me until my tail went soft? Li Yu, resigned, pushed his body up to move through the little chubby boy's fingers. After Li Yu demonstrated how to pet him, the little guy reached a finger out and poked the fish's slippery back. Once he was used to how cold it was, the toddler put his whole hand on him and was soon petting the fish properly. Petting fish makes one happy. There's a spot here, chubby boy. As Li Yu enjoyed the chubby boy's unskilled petting, he put his head in the boy's palm and bumped it twice. He still didn't know what it meant, but Li Yu liked it a lot when Prince Jing did that. The chubby boy smiled and lightly patted his head under his guidance. The smile on his plump face showed a glimpse of the handsome man he'd turned into. Li Yu flicked his tail audibly to encourage him. He and the chubby boy silently played for a bit. There were numerous voices coming from close by, and since Li Yu could be seen now, he hurriedly turned around, flicked his tail, and hid among the aquatic plants in the pond. The chubby baby Prince Jing was quickly surrounded by a flock of imperial physicians and a man wearing dragon robes. The young emperor briskly walked over. To his surprise, he saw a pond of rippling water sprinkled with gold. It was because the little carp was hiding among the aquatic plants. The emperor couldn't see the fish, but he saw the golden light that was reflected off of the fish's body and tail, imprinting its dazzling color into the depths of his eyes. The emperor turned around and looked worriedly at the fifth prince that fell into the water. "How are you feeling? Are you all right?" The chubby boy looked at the emperor and the pond. He couldn't see the fish anymore. He got up shakily, wobbled twice, and fell down again. "Your Highness!" The imperial physicians hurriedly picked him up. One of them felt the fifth prince's forehead and his palm and shouted, "The fifth prince has a high fever. It's hot to the touch." Li Yu hadn't realized the chubby boy's flushed face was an indicator of a fever, and he nearly lunged back out from the aquatic plants in worry. Suddenly, though, everything seemed to be separated by a layer of mist, and he felt himself gradually moving away. The last thing Li Yu heard was the emperor's angry voice saying, "Cure him right now. If anything happens to Tianjing, there's no need for any of you to keep living." He was shocked. The chubby boy's name was originally Tianjing, not Tianchi. Did he have the wrong person? Was it not his tyrant master? Impossible. He'd read the entire book. The emperor didn't have a son named Tianjing. Wang Xi was his personal servant, and he couldn't talk. That was Prince Jing's character setting, but why was Prince Jing's title Jing? Did Prince Jing change his name when he was younger? Among a bunch of princes with names made up of characters that contained the radical de, Tianchi didn't follow the pattern. If it was Tianjing, then it would fit. The only one who could change Prince Jing's name was the emperor, so that was likely what happened. But why? Li Yu couldn't think of a reason, but it wasn't really important. Whether Prince Jing was called Tianchi or Tianjing, he was still his tyrant master. The system's notification came right at that moment. "User, congratulations on completing the Becoming a Koi side quest. You will become a Koi and receive the abilities of a Koi when you collect your reward." Li Yu's thoughts were still with the chubby baby boy who had fallen ill, and he kept having to remind himself that it was just something that happened in the illusion, not reality. Prince Jing was fine now and was just outside. He also wasn't a chubby little child anymore, so he wasn't actually sick, right? But even though Li Yu knew it wasn't real, he couldn't help asking, "System, the chubby child just now, what happened to him afterward?" Afterward, he was sick. He recovered a few days later. Wow, useful. Forget it. He knew the system was good at scamming fish, so it was already quite impressive that he'd managed to find out this much. Li Yu looked at his body. He had gotten larger in the illusion, but he was back to his regular size now. It was just an illusion, after all, so the effect didn't stay with him. He was satisfied with that. The Koi mission was now completed, most likely because he had helped the baby Prince Jing in the illusion just now. The system had wanted him to experience what it was like being a Koi. He knew that the characteristics of a Koi fish was to protect, so experiencing what it was like to be a Koi was for him to experience the feeling of protecting someone, just like the way he chose the chubby boy and helped him. He'd finally completed the mission and could turn into a Koi. Li Yu wasn't very excited, though, now that the long-awaited reward was right in front of him. If he turned into a Koi, would his scale color change? Yes, the system informed him. Your scales will be adjusted again. Then I'll leave it for later. He'd been forced to suddenly complete the koi mission. Last time his scales changed, he'd caused a lot of trouble. Prince Jing had only just finished dealing with it. If he changed scales again, wouldn't it be suspicious? Even if he were a real koi, the change wouldn't happen so often. I'll get to it later. The system seemed confused. Liu tried to leave the system again and succeeded this time. With a lingering fear, he returned to reality, where he found Prince Jing wrapping him in the golden blanket. Liu wagged his tail, touched. Even though the illusion wasn't real, it was nice to meet you, chubby child. Chapter 47. Fish Mouth Hurts. Prince Jing realized that the carp spirit was very friendly toward him after his meditation. But the fish had clearly ignored him by meditating as soon as he woke up. Prince Jing had read some new introductory books on cultivating, so he knew that when one meditated, one could gain insight on some things. So, what was it the carp spirit had come to understand? Liu was quite proud of himself. I found out Prince Jing used to be chubby. How surprising. How unexpected. He knew that what happened in the illusion wasn't real, but the sight of that chubby little boy was something he could look back on in amusement for a long time. Wrapped in the golden blanket, the little carp was laughing so hard that his tyrant master found it strange. The emperor felt guilty that Prince Jing had been injured. He wanted him to stay in the palace until his injury healed, but Prince Jing only agreed to stay for 3 more days. The emperor was silent for a while, thinking about the way bad things seemed to happen to Prince Jing whenever he entered the palace, and ultimately relented. After all this, the emperor remained somewhat uneasy. He wasn't suspicious of Prince Jing, but he wondered if there was something wrong with his fish that even the Imperial Astrological Bureau couldn't see. He sat silently in Tianjing Palace for 2 hours before ordering head eunuch Luo Zheisheng to bring the Zen master Liao Kong from Huguo Temple. This particular master was different from ordinary monks. That was why the emperor sent for him. In his younger years, he'd traveled the world, broadening his horizons, and was an extraordinary conversationalist. Now, he presided over the imperial family's Huguo Temple. If the emperor was said to trust Director Sun of the Imperial Astrological Bureau very much, then Liao Kong was the equivalent of 3 Director Suns. The only thing was that he had already lived through 3 different dynasties and was very elderly, so he didn't get involved in ordinary affairs. The emperor was the only one who could summon him. Liao Kong rarely answered to anyone else. Tangentially, if the 3rd and 6th princes had managed to win over Liao Kong, they wouldn't have had to use any fake monks and things wouldn't have gone so poorly for them. Head eunuch Luo rushed to Huguo Temple with an imperial edict, and Prince Jing, who was staying at Jingtai Hall over his few days at the palace, learned of it soon after. When Wang Xi gave him the secret report, Prince Jing glanced at his constant companion, who had been moved into a blue-white porcelain fish tank, then slightly nodded. Liu was a fish, so it technically didn't matter where he lived, but at Prince Jing's manor, there was the huge pond that Prince Jing had built for him, allowing him to swim around freely. He liked the manor more, but staying here in Jingtai Hall for a couple of days wasn't a big deal. When Wang Xi put him in the porcelain fish tank, Liu had been initially surprised. He'd assumed the fish tank in Jingtai Hall would be too small for him now, but Prince Jing had really updated and altered all the fish tanks he barely used too. He swam around inside, extremely comfortable. There was no one better at taking care of a fish than his tyrant master, he thought proudly. The first day they stayed in Jingtai Hall, the 3rd and 6th princes' mothers sent people to visit. Since the 2 princes were being punished for offending Prince Jing, the 3rd prince's mother, Consort Qian, and the 6th prince's mother, Consort Zhang, wanted to ask Prince Jing for mercy. They had already asked the emperor, but Consort Qian had only recently gained a little favor from the 3rd prince's brief advancement, and Consort Zhang, like the 6th prince, had never made much of a name for herself. Their words were useless in front of the emperor, and when he rejected their pleas, they were afraid to keep asking, lest he become angry and hurt the 2 princes further. Consort Qian mulled it over and decided to take Consort Zhang with her to beg Prince Jing for forgiveness. Consort Zhang had no ideas herself. She had cried when her son was beaten, so she went along with Consort Qian. However, since they were concubines, it was not appropriate for them to visit a prince in private. Consort Tian wanted the emperor to be aware of their planned visit, so she sent several palace servants in advance with gifts for Prince Jing. But those servants waited outside Jingtai Hall for several hours, and Prince Jing gave no indication that he would meet them. When the emperor heard the news, he was extremely dissatisfied to learn that Consort Tian and Consort Zhang were disturbing Prince Jing's recovery, so he had them added to the house arrest list, killing the two birds with one stone by setting an example for the rest of the harem too. From now on, everyone started to avoid Jingtai Hall, and the surroundings quieted down considerably. In the morning and evening, the imperial physician would come to Jingtai Hall to change Prince Jing's dressing and listen to his pulse. The first night, Prince Jing had a fever. When Li Yu woke up, he checked on Prince Jing out of habit. There was no one else around. Since he was in the porcelain fish tank again, it was difficult to see outside, so he swam to the edge of the tank, carefully placed his fins on it, and pushed himself up. He saw Prince Jing lying down limply, as if he hadn't moved all night. Li Yu thought it was strange at first, and when he noticed Prince Jing's abnormally flushed face and short breaths, he knew that Prince Jing was running a fever. He immediately transformed into a human and rushed over to feel Prince Jing's forehead. It was very hot. The fever seemed to be quite high. When the imperial physician was treating Prince Jing, he had mentioned that it was likely Prince Jing would get a fever, so cold water and handkerchiefs had been stocked in the room. Li Yu quickly dipped a handkerchief in the water and placed it on Prince Jing's forehead, then rushed out to find Wang Xi. Wang Xi was standing guard outside, so he came right away when Li Yu called for him. Upon seeing the situation, he immediately went to find the imperial physician, asking Li Yu to watch over Prince Jing. Obviously, he would do his best, but he could only transform for 2 hours, so hopefully Wang Gogong would be back by then. In any case, he would just take care of Prince Jing for now. Li Yu sat down next to Prince Jing, switching the handkerchief out when it warmed up too much, but Prince Jing was still burning up. He couldn't just continue like this. Li Yu thought back to the physical cooling methods he knew of from the modern world and decided to try one of them out. He undid Prince Jing's undershirt and wiped down several of his joints with warm water. It was quite effective, and the heat on Prince Jing's body soon receded. But Li Yu himself was exhausted. The illusory events of the Koi mission may not have been real, but the energy he'd used to save the chubby little boy was. After he exited the illusion and completed the mission, he still had to get up in the middle of the night to take care of a feverish Prince Jing. Li Yu didn't want to complain. Deep down, he felt guilty that he couldn't help the chubby little boy with his fever, so he could make up for it now. The imperial physician still hadn't arrived, but Li Yu had succeeded in lowering Prince Jing's fever. He covered Prince Jing with a quilt again and put a wet handkerchief on his forehead, afraid that the fever would come back. The fish was too tired. He wanted to stay awake until he turned back into a fish so he could jump into the fish tank to sleep, but it was too difficult. Li Yu's eyelids were drooping, and before the transformation was over, his body slowly slumped over. Prince Jing was sleeping pretty deeply, and when he finally woke up, he felt weak, and his chest felt worryingly tight. The human-shaped fish was lying on his chest, fast asleep. Prince Jing thought he must be dreaming, and he was both confused and happy. He couldn't help himself. He softly touched Xiao Yu's face. He was real. He didn't know what had happened, but since his fish was so defenseless, he found himself wanting to trap him. Prince Jing moved his injured hand without thinking, and the wound on his palm throbbed in pain. Maybe the wound had reopened, but it didn't seem to matter. He carelessly raised an eyebrow and used his other hand to pull the sleeping carp spirit into his arms. Li Yu, who thought he was still a fish, squirmed and muttered, "Little Chubs, you're so heavy." Little Chubs? Prince Jing was slightly upset. The fish was always under his watchful eye. Where did this fat man come from to steal him away? Prince Jing wanted to wake Xiao Yu and question him, but he'd only sat up a little bit when the handkerchief on his forehead slid off. The handkerchief had gotten warm, so he hadn't noticed it until now. He held the wet handkerchief in his hand. Xiao Yu was still sleeping soundly in his embrace. When he thought of how uncomfortable he felt when he woke up, he more or less understood what had happened. He must have had a fever, and Xiao Yu had been taking care of him until he'd fallen asleep from exhaustion. When he realized this, he was still a bit angry, but felt reluctant to wake up his fish. Who cared about some fat man? As long as long as he didn't let go, nobody could take Xiao Yu away. Prince Jing was worried the carp spirit would catch a cold, so he tucked him under the covers and lay back down beside him. Xiao Yu snuggled into his shoulder sleepily, and Prince Jing suddenly realized what he'd done. He was sharing a bed with the carp spirit. Prince Jing's breath caught in his throat. Was it finally time for absorbing essence? In the books, the snake spirits and fox spirits were always the ones to initiate, so Prince Jing could only wait. But this fish was an anomaly. No matter how long Prince Jing waited, he was still dead asleep. Prince Jing's feelings were complicated. As if in revenge, he covered the carp spirit's mouth and nose. Li Yu whined and flailed a bit. Prince Jing let him go, and when Li Yu could breathe again, he settled back down. Prince Jing impulsively leaned in to kiss Xiao Yu's slightly parted lips. Wang Xi jogged back to Jingtai Hall with the imperial physician in tow. Wang Gonggong wiped the sweat from his forehead and asked the imperial physician to wait. As always, he had to check the room before announcing a visitor. He peered in past the half-open door and saw no sign of Li Gongzi. He was a little surprised, but when he looked back at the bed, he froze. The two figures under the brocade quilt. Wang Xi knew immediately it was Prince Jing and Li Gongzi. Wang Xi felt greatly conflicted. His Highness had always been pure of heart and free of desire, so Wang Xi should have been happy for his master that something like this happened. But didn't His Highness have a fever? Why would they, at a time like this? The imperial physician was already here. Should he be announced or not? His Highness was finally enjoying himself, so if he ruined that, he'd be in huge trouble. But if he didn't announce the imperial physician, the still sick Prince Jing and his weary body might not be able to handle it. Wang Xi closed his eyes. Even if his master blamed him later, he had to do it. He knelt and, in a trembling voice, said, "Your Highness, the imperial physician is here." As soon as Wang Xi spoke, the lips that Prince Jing had kissed several times suddenly disappeared out from under him. Prince Jing looked down. Xiao Yu had turned back into a fish in his arms. He knew that Xiao Yu couldn't transform for very long, so he hadn't planned on doing anything else. But when he saw the black and gold fish on his chest, Prince Jing still paused for a moment, feeling like this scene was somehow familiar. But he didn't have time to think about it. He had to handle the fish first. Prince Jing took out a jade bell from under his pillow and rang it. Wang Xi let out a sigh of relief. His Highness was willing to see the imperial physician and ask him to wait outside. After all, with Li Gongzi there, he had to clean up first. He couldn't let the imperial physician in just like that. Wang Xi respectfully exited and closed the door for Prince Jing. Once Wang Xi had left, Prince Jing stood up, fish in hand, already very experienced at carp spirit wrangling. He put the sleeping fish in the fish tank, wrapped him in the golden leaf blanket, and patted him on the head, slightly smiling. The fish, sleeping without a worry in the world, blew a bubble. Finished, with nothing out of place, Prince Jing lay back down in his bed. He rang the jade bell again and let Wang Xi and the imperial physician in. Wang Xi came in, his gaze wandering and his thoughts confused. His Highness was there, but where was Li Gongzi? There hadn't been much time, and he had been on guard outside. Where could Li Gongzi have gone? Prince Jing's gaze swept over to him, and Wang Xi immediately stopped his random guessing. When Li Yu woke up, he was in the porcelain fish tank again. Recalling that he'd been so exhausted from taking care of a patient that he accidentally fell asleep, he was speechless. Ugh, he'd been too careless. What if Prince Jing and Wang Gonggong found out? Sweetie. Thank goodness Prince Jing was asleep with a fever and hadn't seen him. He probably woke up in the fish tank because he turned into a fish next to Prince Jing's bed, and when Wang Gonggong returned and saw him, he must have put him back in the fish tank. The imperial physician had already left, and Li Yu heard Wang Xi telling the other servants that Prince Jing's wound had opened again, but fortuitously, it was dealt with in time. There shouldn't be any serious issues if it was looked after carefully. That was good. Li Yu's worries lightened considerably, but he kept shaking his head. Did his mouth get bitten by something? Why did it kind of hurt? Chapter 48. A fish follows his master. When Li Yu heard that the emperor had summoned Zen Master Liao Kong to the palace, he was perched on the edge of the porcelain fish tank, staring angrily at Prince Jing. As soon as Prince Jing's injury improved, he started reading an old book on cultivation again, right in front of his fish. Li Yu didn't know what was wrong with him. How could the dignified male protagonist of a palace novel be interested in cultivation? He was so focused when reading, Li Yu felt waves of danger crashing in his heart, afraid that Prince Jing would try to cultivate immortality when he wasn't watching. Come what may, he'd deal with it. It wasn't the first time he'd interfered with Prince Jing's interest in cultivation. At first, he wanted to get Prince Jing's book wet as usual. He'd gotten many of them wet before, and Prince Jing had never blamed him, so he'd become fearless. But now, looking at the gauze on Prince Jing's hand, he hesitated. What if he got water on Prince Jing's wound when he jumped onto it? The imperial physician had reminded them countless times that the injury couldn't touch water. Li Yu didn't want his tyrant master to get worse and come down with another fever. That would make him exhausted all over again. Maybe he could turn into a human and hide the book instead. Or tattle to Wang Xi. Wang Xi wouldn't want his master to cultivate, right? Li Yu was just thinking of how to ruin Prince Jing's grand plan for cultivation when head eunuch Luo came to Jingtai Hall to convey a message from the emperor. Zen Master Liao Kong was here, and the emperor hoped Prince Jing would meet with him. Head eunuch Luo whispered something into Prince Jing's ear, and Prince Jing glanced at Xiao Yu calmly before agreeing. Meanwhile, Li Yu was a little panicked at the mention of Liao Kong's name. If his memory served him well, Zen Master Liao Kong was the head monk of Hu Guo Temple. In the novel, he was a monk with a transcendent status. When Prince Jing became a tyrant, Liao Kong had tried to persuade him to show more leniency. Though Prince Jing had already become quite the despot, he wasn't able to kill Liao Kong, which showed how powerful he really was. But in the original novel, Liao Kong had only appeared to persuade Prince Jing. Why did he want to meet with Prince Jing now, when Prince Jing was fine? Li Yu never considered his own role in all of this. Since Prince Jing had been reading a lot of books on cultivation, had he changed his mind about cultivation? Had he seen through the mortal world and decided to follow in Liao Kong's footsteps to become a monk? For a male protagonist of a palace novel who never played by the rules and wanted to cultivate all the time, it was totally possible. Noticing that Prince Jing was about to go to Tianting Palace, Li Yu jumped out of the fish tank and into the crystal bottle. He wanted to go too. Li Yu secretly decided that if Prince Jing mentioned becoming a monk to Liao Kong, then he would cause trouble in Tianting Palace and ruin those plans. Prince Jing wasn't planning on leaving him behind. As he put Xiao Yu into the crystal bottle, though, he felt that his fish somehow seemed to have a murderous aura today. When Prince Jing arrived at Tianting Palace, the emperor and Liao Kong had just finished with some small talk. Prince Jing greeted the emperor, and Liao Kong stepped forward and nodded slightly to him. The crystal bottle was in Prince Jing's sleeve, so Li Yu peeked out. Liao Kong was at least 70, his beard and hair completely white, but he was still energetic and healthy. Very different from the Six Princes' fake monks. It was immediately clear that this was an advanced and eminent monk. Li Yu only looked for a moment, but somehow Liao Kong's fiery gaze turned toward him. Damn, this was a truly powerful monk. Would he be able to tell that he was a transmigrated fish? Li Yu was shocked and didn't dare peek out again. Prince Jing covered his sleeves instinctively, blocking Liao Kong's line of sight. "Your Highness, Prince Jing," Liao Kong said, smiling. "Long time no see." Prince Jing frowned and nodded. The emperor was quite excited. Liao Kong's arrival brought back memories for him. The emperor rubbed his hands together and said, "Tianchi, do you remember Liao Kong? You fell into the water when you were a child and you were in danger, as your fever wouldn't go down. The imperial physicians were helpless, and Liao Kong just so happened to be in the palace at the time. I didn't know what to do, so I asked Liao Kong to come see you. Thankfully, he knew an old method that could reduce fever. He also told me that you would be lacking water in your life, so I changed your name and prayed. After that, your condition took a turn for the better and you made a full recovery." Clearly emotional, the emperor added, "They say that those who survive a disaster will be met with good fortune in the future. I still remember the pond you fell into. At that time, it was glimmering with a dazzling golden light. Because of what Liao Kong said, I chose the name Chi for you. It was the first time Prince Jing had heard the emperor talk of such things. All he knew was that before he turned 3, his name was Tianjing. Then afterward, it was Tianchi. When he was given a title as an adult, the emperor gave him the word Jing, returning his name to him. But he barely remembered his fever that day, much less the reason behind it. Since he couldn't sneak any more peeks, Li Yu had opted to listen instead. He was stunned. Could it be that the illusion wasn't just an illusion, but something that had happened to Prince Jing in the past? From what the emperor was saying, it seemed the plump little prince really did fall into the water and came out of it with a persisting high fever. But in the illusion, Li Yu was there. In reality, Prince Jing had not been as lucky and probably had to drift to shore himself. Picturing the boy's round body floating alone, Li Yu found it quite tragic. At the time, it must have been very dangerous. If even the imperial physicians were helpless against such a high fever, it had to have been a life-threatening situation for a toddler. The emperor asked for a monk instead of a physician and changed his name in the hopes of changing his fate. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Li Yu hadn't yet realized what the golden light the emperor mentioned was. How could there be a light in the pond? It was probably reflected from something else. Anyway, he had guessed right. Prince Jing's name used to be Tianjing. It was fortunate that Liao Kong had been around to prompt the emperor, Li Yu suddenly thought. If the emperor had gotten too creative, Prince Jing might have been called Tianguang or Tianjin, neither of which sounded as nice as Tianchi. Though Prince Jing didn't remember what happened back then, he still bowed to Liao Kong in thanks at the emperor's reminder. Liao Kong modestly said, "It was but a slight effort. The heavens help the worthy, Prince Jing." "Great master, please don't be humble." After a bout of pleasantries, the emperor finally got to the main subject. "I must trouble you to take another look today. Prince Jing has been raising a fish recently, and I think it's quite good." Oh. Li Yu finally realized that Prince Jing didn't want to become a monk. The emperor wanted Prince Jing to meet Liao Kong because of his fish. The little carp was a bit troubled. He wasn't afraid of most people, but would an eminent monk like Liao Kong be able to tell that he was a transmigrating fish? Li Yu decided to hide as much as he could. He would try to look like a normal carp for eating and not cause trouble in front of Liao Kong. Since the emperor had commanded it, Prince Jing calmly took the crystal bottle out of his sleeve and opened the lid in front of the emperor and Liao Kong. As soon as Liao Kong saw the black and gold fish in the crystal bottle, he became contemplative. Under his gaze, the little carp was very obedient and barely swam. Prince Jing, afraid that the little carp was nervous in front of a stranger, lightly touched his fish's back with his uninjured left hand. Li Yu pretended he didn't feel it and wasn't cooperative at all. He coldly blew a bubble. Prince Jing really wasn't sure what to make of this. Liao Kong witnessed every interaction between Prince Jing and his fish. He was silent for a moment before saying to the emperor, "Old Jing's fish does seem quite extraordinary to me." There was a pause, and before he could continue speaking, Liao Kong suddenly felt 2 burning gazes, one from the cold-faced Prince Jing and another from the little carp in Prince Jing's hand that was trying to act dumb. Pets really did take after their owners. Liao Kong smiled privately and said, "I've never encountered such a thing in my life. This fish..." He stopped purposefully to create suspense, and, as expected, Prince Jing's gaze nearly bore holes into him. Liao Kong was over 70, though. When he felt a chill on his neck, he chuckled and said, "This fish is a descendant of the koi. He doesn't look like one now, but he will as time passes." Li Yu was dumbfounded. He didn't think a monk would have such good insight. He couldn't say that Liao Kong didn't see through him. How else could he know that he would look more like a koi in the future? But he couldn't say that Liao Kong had exposed him. Otherwise, why would he not lay the truth bare? Prince Jing gave Liao Kong a cold glance. As long as he didn't say Xiao Yu was a monster or would turn into a dragon, it was all the same to him. The emperor hesitated before asking, "The fish is really a koi?" Liao Kong nodded. "Yes," he said solemnly. "This type of koi is very rare. His Highness was very lucky to chance upon it." The emperor trusted Liao Kong, and his words were consistent with what the Imperial Astrological Bureau had said. The emperor felt a burden lifted off his shoulders, and he smiled, saying, "No wonder I thought it was auspicious. Turns out it is at least part koi." The third prince had even tried to frame a koi. The emperor was even more disdainful of him than he had been already. Liu still tried his hardest to look like a normal carp, silently observing the emperor and Liao Kong's movements. Liao Kong had paused between his words, really giving off an air of a great monk, and he'd scared Liu several times. But in the end, he announced to the emperor that Liu was actually a koi. In the future, it shouldn't matter how much he changed, right? Liao Kong looked scary to the fish, but he'd helped him in the end. Luckily, somehow without even trying, Liu had managed to get the approval of both the emperor and Prince Jing. Soon, he could accept the reward from the koi mission. The emperor chatted happily with Liao Kong, while Prince Jing listened silently. When Liao Kong left, the emperor ordered Prince Jing to see him off. Surprisingly, Prince Jing didn't take the little carp with him this time, and instead asked Wang Xi to take the crystal bottle back to his room first. He still had questions he needed to ask Liao Kong, and he didn't want the carp spirit to know. Once they were alone, Prince Jing bowed deeply. Liao Kong chuckled. "Thank you for trusting me, Your Highness. I hope I did not disappoint you." Prince Jing looked up at Liao Kong and smiled. When Prince Jing had found out about Mu Tianxiao's plan to make up a rumor about turning into a dragon, he'd predicted that things might get out of hand. The longer such rumors went on, the worse it would be. The only solution was to stop the rumors quickly and thoroughly by finding someone who could convince the emperor and completely overturn the rumor. But at first, Prince Jing wasn't sure who he should ask. The emperor trusted Director Suen of the Imperial Astrological Bureau, but it was hard to guarantee that the emperor wouldn't be confused and swayed by the rumors. He couldn't rely solely on Director Suen. Prince Jing then thought of Zen Master Liao Kong of Huguo Temple. The imperial family had established the temple, and the emperor trusted Liao Kong's character. If he had any more doubts, he would definitely ask Liao Kong, so the prince might as well directly ask Liao Kong to help. Everyone knew that Liao Kong was indifferent to worldly affairs and only took orders from the emperor, but they didn't know that Liao Kong had a deep, secret friendship with the former Duke of Chang'an, Prince Jing's grandfather. Even though the emperor was the only one who could officially use him, Liao Kong would still run around for his best friend. When Liao Kong responded to the emperor's request to help the fifth prince and his fever, it was partially for the Duke of Chang'an's sake too. Prince Jing had known about this early on, and with the former Duke of Chang'an's assistance, he was able to ask Liao Kong for help this time. Prince Jing had made preparations with Liao Kong early on, and what had happened in front of the emperor just now was only a show to make the emperor's doubts dissipate. There was no one else around, so Liao Kong kept praising him. "With such a mind, Your Highness, you have a bright future." Prince Jing thought he was teasing, so he lowered his eyes and clasped his hands politely. The conversation that followed was more secretive. Prince Jing took out paper and a brush from his sleeve that he had prepared beforehand and handed it to Liao Kong. The monk picked up the brush and wrote, "Your Highness, are you not afraid something will happen if you take him around with you?" Liao Kong didn't say who him was, but they both knew. Prince Jing wrote without thinking, "He wouldn't hurt me." Liao Kong nodded. He could tell that Prince Jing's carp wasn't an ordinary carp, but he sensed it was not evil or malicious. If he had, he wouldn't have agreed to do this for Prince Jing to cover up for the fish. "Your Highness, your heart is as clear and bright as a mirror," he said. "Is there anything else you need me to clarify?" Prince Jing wrote, "Great Master, do you know why he came?" Liao Kong took a long, thoughtful look at Prince Jing. "I may not be able to help with much else, but I do know a little about this. The day you fell into the water many years ago, I happened to be in the palace and had seen a black and gold fish swimming by in the pond you fell into." "What?" Prince Jing's gaze swam with emotion, and his hands couldn't stop trembling. He wrote something in a hurry, then crossed it out. When he was finally able to calm down, he wrote, "What did the fish look like?" Liao Kong said, "The same as your fish right now. It was completely black, except for golden scales on its belly and tail. Only it was slightly bigger." Prince Jing was silent. The size of the tail wasn't an issue. He'd seen Xiao Yu grow larger not long ago. The fish Liao Kong saw must have been Xiao Yu. Had Xiao Yu come to see him when he was younger? Liao Kong went on. The pond you fell into was extremely deep. It would have been impossible for a toddler to swim out on his own. Do you understand what I mean, Your Highness? Let me put it this way. Liao Kong smiled. I don't know what he is, but he must have come for you. Come for me? Prince Jing was deeply moved. He suddenly remembered the familiar scene of Xiao Yu laying on his chest when he turned back into a fish, as well as the first time they met, when he'd picked up the fish on the brink of death that the cat had thrown away. What was he thinking back then? Why did he stop for a fish? Because he had heard something hitting the floor, and it was the sound of a fish's tail slapping the ground. He didn't know how he knew, but it seemed to have been etched into his memory. The sound of a fish's tail meant the fish was still alive. When the sound stopped, it meant the fish was about to die. So, without thinking, he went to save the fish. Prince Jing couldn't help but chuckle. He didn't remember the incident from the past, but the instinct left in him was probably a remnant of that time. Alrighty, everyone. We have finished reading chapters 44 through 48, and you know what? I've got a mouthful to talk about this time. So please bear with me, or just, wait until the next video or skip to the next video if you come a little later. So, man, where do I start? Let's just start backwards. So I'm gonna say the moment when Li Yu was put into the illusion, something in my spirit just knew that it wasn't actually an illusion and that it was real. And then when he woke up and it turned out that Prince Jing had a fever, I was like, oh, so it wasn't an illusion. But now hearing what the emperor said, I was like, okay, so it really wasn't an illusion. But then I'm just like, wait, is Li Yu really a carp spirit? Because how in the world did the system make him go back into the past and all that stuff happen and then it correlate in the future? I have no freaking idea, but who knows? I just think that is so cool though. Also, let me just go ahead and apologize because my notes are kind of all over the place. So I guess I'm not really going backwards completely. I'm going backward, forward, back, forward. Who knows? Anyway, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about was when Prince Jing covered Li Yu's mouth and nose. I was like, how dare you? Don't be so mean. He's sleeping. Come on, stop. And then I also thought it was funny when he was like, does Li Yu need his essence? And then he went to go kiss him. I was like, dude, he's asleep. How are you going to give him his essence? I mean, your essence while he's asleep. Come on, my guy. Another thing I wanted to say is that Li Yu, you're so clueless. You just think that Prince Jing does not know about you transforming into a human. And you were so wrong, my guy. You are so wrong. You have totally been caught forever ago by this point, and you don't even know it. And you keep thinking that you're getting away with things when you turn into a fish and then you just somehow end up in the tank. Do you not take a second to really think that there's a possibility that at least Prince Jing knows about your true form? Especially after this time, because you weren't drunk or anything like that. You fell asleep there, but that's neither here nor there. I think he thinks he's a little more sly than he actually is. He's definitely creative, innovative, but sly, he is not. Okay? So the next thing that I want to say, actually, this is a quick little lesson because it was from Liao Kong, is he said, long time no see. And I just thought it would be cool to teach you guys how to say that. So it's really short. It's just 4 characters. The first one is hao. The second one is jiu. The third one is bu. And the last one is jian. But they change a little bit when you say them together. So the hao and jiu are both third tones. But since they're right next to each other, you're going to say hao as the second tone. So hao. And then go jiu. So hao jiu. And bu is a fourth tone going down. But you're going to take it up like a second tone. So bu. And then jian, fourth tone. So bu jian. 好久不见. 好久不见. Okay, that's enough of that. But speaking of this monk, there was a typo in the book, And I don't know if it's the temple, the Huguo temple or the Hugo temple. And since there's so little information on the disabled tyrant's beloved pet fish, I couldn't find out. So I just kept saying Huguo. And I looked online, I think on like Web Novel or something like that, and it was spelled as Huguo. So I'm going to assume it's Huguo. So I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but I don't know because it was spelled two different ways in the book. And I'm just sticking with Huguo. Anyway, okay, now I'm going to work from the beginning of my notes, kind of, sort of. I want to talk about the king really quick because so many schemes have been happening. And I realize, which of course it's good for him to get angry, but he keeps putting his anger on other people and like, being like, I almost got tricked by a woman. I almost got tricked by my sons, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, at some point, I think you need to acknowledge your neglect and your lack of discernment, my guy, because you hear something and then you immediately just kind of go along with it rather than investigating. And these kinds of things, these sneaky things are happening in the court because they always happen. And like you said, you were watching your son, Mu Tianming or Mu Tianxiao, I don't remember which one, but these kind of sneaky things happen. So you should be more careful with just suddenly believing something and becoming wary. Just investigate, my guy, because clearly you don't have discernment and you don't know your children, your sons very well. So that was a little upsetting, but nevertheless, of course the king isn't going to admit he's wrong. One thing I will say though, it's quite interesting that the sixth prince, Mu Tianxiao, did admit that he was wrong, while Mu Tianming did not. And of course, I think out of all the princes that we know, other than Prince Jing, I would say Mu Tianxiao seems to be the smartest one out of all of them. He's a very good planner, and he's got this plan ultimately right now where if things go wrong, Mu Tianming is going to be the one that's taking the fall until, there's no one left to fall back on. We'll see how that goes. Also, since we're speaking about the princes, I just want to go ahead and break it down for you because I know sometimes with there being so many characters, especially if you're not familiar with the Chinese language, sometimes remembering characters can be a little difficult. So I'm just going to say for the princes that we have been introduced to, the second prince, the one who's been demoted to Marquis of An, is Mu Tianzhao. He's the one that feels like the fish, Li Yu, is basically his nightmare, him and his mother's. So, yeah. And he also tried to poison Li Yu and almost poisoned him and the dog Xiongfeng. So then we have the third prince, Mu Tianming, and that is the one who tried to get into the good graces of Prince Jing at first. And if I'm not mistaken, he's also the one that gave him Chu Yanyu. But then, he also tried to take the fish, first nicely and then by thievery. So he definitely sucks, hiding behind a smile. And then when that doesn't work out, then you try other means. Then we have the fifth prince, which is Mu Tianchi or Prince Jing. We know him. He's the male lead. And the last prince we were introduced to, the sixth prince, Mu Tianxiao. So the others we have not been introduced to yet, and we'll see when we actually get to them. Now, the other thing that I want to break down to you guys it started on page 102, or it was mentioned on page 102, but then the emperor went into elaboration on it, which I was super happy for. But just in case anyone wants to know this, I have this information for you, and that is about Prince Jing's name. So for those of you who are not familiar with radicals in the Chinese language, basically they are certain characters within their words, or there's certain symbols that are indicative of what is the subject matter of the character. So in Jing, as mentioned in the story, it means, it has the radical for zhi, which means day. And that was in Jing, which means seen. So Prince Jing, or if you put it with like feng, which is wind, feng jing could mean scenery. Or if you put it with qingjing, that could mean scene from like a show or movie or something like that. So that was the character that matched with everyone of the other princes having the zhi in it. But since the emperor said that he was lacking water, he changed his name to Chi. So Mu Tianchi. Chi has a different radical. It has the water radical, which there are two options, but in this one, it has three lines, two small ones going up a little, and then a third one kind of like falling down from them. I'll try to remember to put it in the description so that you guys can see it. And then that radical is followed by the character ye, which means also. So chi means pond or pool, and ye means also. So we'll just say pool. So his name was changed from Scene to Pool. The other thing I want to say is Tian means sky, but it can also mean day. If you put it with something else, it can mean weather, like Tianqi. Anyway, and then for all of the princes, including the emperor, Mu. Mu Tianchi, Mu Tianxiao, Mu 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 Mu. Mu, although it's not used by itself, it usually means like solemn or reverent, respectful, depending on what you put it with. So like Sumu is solemn and respectful. Jingmu is solemn and quiet or reverent. So when we look at Prince Jing's name from when he was younger, Mu Tian Jing, that was basically like solemn or heavenly scenery. Then the meaning of his name basically changed to solemn or reverent sky pond. So I don't know if anyone really cared to know that, but I just thought that was very interesting. And as soon as Liu had mentioned it earlier on page 102, I was like, I'm actually kind of interested to know why his name was changed as well. So yes, I'm grateful for the Emperor for giving that breakdown. Anyway, okay, that is officially all I have to say about these chapters. I'm super excited to continue. Really, I am just loving this series so much. And you know, I am a person who thrives off of angst. Whether it's something I'm watching, but especially books that I read, I love the angst. Like Arha and even the angst that was in what do you call it? Tianguan Sufu. Although I didn't finish it, even in Remnants of Filth, so I'll be starting that again on the channel if you guys saw my post, and just so many other things. I love to hurt me, stab me 100 times, like Shelian. Anyway, I don't know if any of you saw my post. I did see a few people liked it, but I just wanted to put out there, in case you did not see it, my official 2025 reading schedule is finally up. So at least for the next few months, you know exactly what I'll be reading after this. So, but just in case you didn't see it, after this, we're going to Peerless because we just absolutely have to. I'm so excited to read that. And then after Peerless, even though that's not all the way done yet, we're going to start reading Guardian. And then I have some books listed, so you just go check the post. After that, they're not in order necessarily. That's not set in stone, but for sure, the next two series are. And the thing I'll say about Peerless, and this will pretty much be the case with any series that I read that is not finished. If I start reading them and they're not done, then we're just going to go on to the next series. But as soon as the next book drops for a series that I was reading, we're going to go back to it. I'm not going to stop the current thing that I'm reading, but I'll just kind of split them in half. I don't normally like to do that, reading two books at a time, as I said before, but I will do it for the sake of continuing the story and trying to get it out as soon as possible. So anyway, I won't say anything else. I love you guys. Well, and I will see you all next time.